Hello everyone and welcome to my full channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. As Willow Tate Kane's trial reached a dramatic climax, tension hung thick in the crowded halls of Port Charles. Alexis Davis, who had fought for years to retrieve her legal license, found herself in the difficult situation of defending a client she now knew was guilty. Willow, Drew Kane's supposedly loyal wife and mother, had shot him twice in the back out of fury and desperation. A child's innocent phone call with its familiar ringtone ringing over security footage had sealed the fact in Alexis's mind. However, as she walked her office, her heart hammering, she considered the consequences of acting on that information. Diane Miller returned triumphantly at that point. Carolyn Hennessy's sharp-tonged, no-nonsense attorney returned to town in a wheelchair after enduring 2 operations to recuperate from a serious leg injury, ready to retake her place in the legal world. The timing couldn't have been better or more perilous. When Alexis spotted her longtime friend and legal partner in the office, she instantly sought her advice under the protection of attorney-client privilege. "I can't defend her anymore," Alexis admitted, her voice quivering with the weight of her discoveries. Willow shot Drew. "She's guilty and I have proof." Diane listened closely, her expression steady as she took in the news. She reminded Alexis of the hard reality of their profession. Resigning now would result in a mistrial, garnering scrutiny from the bar and potentially costing Alexis everything she had built. Alexis had worked her way back to practice law following a protracted disbarment, a battle Diane had assisted with. To throw it away over one ethically questionable case, unthinkable. Then there was Scout, Alexis's adorable grandchild, whose access to her grandma was dependent on Drew's goodwill. Drew wouldn't forgive Alexis if she exposed Willow. He would slam the door during family visits, wielding his custody power as a weapon. "Look at Scout's picture," Diane said gently but firmly. "Is your duty as a lawyer more important than her future?" The remarks cut deep. Alexis spent years reconstructing her life, career, and connections. She had already lost so much. Her license had been revoked, and her family was strained as a result of previous transgressions. Scout signified optimism, a second opportunity for the grandmotherly attachment she desired. With Diane's advice, Alexis took the hard decision to remain silent. She would present the last argument as planned, portraying Willow as innocent while subtly shifting suspicion on Michael Corinthos, Willow's estranged husband and the man Drew badly wanted imprisoned. It was a lie by omission, an ethical lapse that Diane justified as vital for life. The courtroom was alive with expectancy. Drew sat by Willow, the ever-supportive husband, offering reassurance that the jury will find her innocent. He promised her complete custody of their children after Michael left the picture, his words tinged with the hatred that had defined him since his return to Port Charles. Willow, pale and controlled, nodded, but her eyes showed flickers of terror. As Alexis rose to speak, the room went silent. She complimented Willow's commitment as a mother, pointed out the lack of convincing evidence, and cleverly shifted blame to Michael, his envy, his history of conflict with Drew. Alexis stumbled for a heartbeat, almost blurting out the truth, but she caught herself, corrected her course, and rested her case. The jurors deliberated while Port Charles held its breath. Whispers spread across the halls. Had Alexis done enough? Would Willow be able to walk freely? Drew, convinced of his version of events, made big vows to allies, vowing to defend his family at whatever cost. However, fissures were appearing. Willow's strong mother, Nina Reeves, gave a stern warning to Drew, reminding him that pushing too hard might have disastrous consequences. Carly Spencer stood on the sidelines, worried by the growing turmoil and Drew's increasingly unpredictable conduct. Diane, meanwhile, remained Alexis' anchor. After court, the two women had a quiet moment in the office together. Diane, who was still recovering, offered no judgment, simply understanding. She understood the law's ambiguities better than anyone, having defended the indefensible for clients considerably more dangerous than Willow. "You did what you had to," she stated simply. Alexis nodded, fatigued yet determined. She had kept her license, access to Scout, and possibly her sanity. But the cost lingered, a secret that if revealed could bring everything crashing down. As the days passed while waiting for the verdict, additional threads in Port Charles began to weave into the greater tapestry. Valentine Cassadine took risks, leading Ava Jerome into unexpected meetings at Windmere. Brick faced unforeseen dangers. While Anna's world was turned upside down by surprising disclosures, Drew's political goals, once a source of pride, suddenly seemed risky. His obsession with punishing Michael had blinded him to the perils looming ahead. Alexis reflected on how far she had come. From disbarment to reinstatement, from defeat to cautious restoration, she fought for every inch of her professional life. Diane's homecoming reflected that struggle, a reminder that even in the darkest ethical quandaries, true friends and strong minds may lead the way. Together, they had maintained the delicate equilibrium Alexis required to continue going forward. However, the verdict loomed like a dark cloud. If Willow was acquitted, Michael may face additional scrutiny, possibly even prosecution as the alternate suspect. Drew's pledges of justice could escalate into a grudge that consumes everyone around him. Alexis knew she had chosen family over the truth, a decision that repeated previous ones. Will it haunt her? Only time and the jury could tell. In the quiet hours after court, Alexis stood by the window, watching the lights of Port Charles flicker below. Diane wheeled closer, putting a soothing touch on her arm. You got everything back today, Diane stated softly. Your license, your granddaughter's future. Hold on to that. Alexis managed a faint grin, grateful for the person who had helped her traverse the impossible. For the time being, she had held on to what was most important. The rest she'd deal with when the time came, as she usually did. The saga of Port Charles continued, full of secrets, alliances, and the never-ending dance of justice and loyalty. Alexis Davis, attorney-at-law once more, stepped forward into whatever was ahead. Backed by Diane's wisdom and her own hard-earned tenacity. In a place where truth was frequently bent to expediency, survival sometimes demanded the most difficult decisions of all. The courtroom steps were sticky with rain, the kind that seeped through coats and sunk in bones. Alexis Davis stood at the bottom, peering up at the big stone structure as if it were a foe she had encountered too many times before. There was a brief period when she considered whether walking back inside was worthwhile. Her law license, her career, her dignity, all of it had been taken away piece by piece, not in a single dramatic fall, but over time via a gradual erosion of trust, accusation, and betrayal. Hey, Diane Miller said softly, cutting through her thoughts. If you're going to stare it down, at least act like you're going to win. Alexis turned with a tired smile. Diane stood alongside her, umbrella tilted and eyes sharp as usual. There was unwavering confidence, familiarity, and deep comfort. Do you honestly think we can solve this? Alexis asked gently. Diane raised her brow. Alexis, I don't enter court unless I want to leave with something valuable. Today, we're getting everything back. The courtroom was filled with hushed talk. This wasn't a criminal trial, but the stakes were just as high. Alexis' disbarment hearing had been reopened because to fresh evidence, which Diane had battled tooth and nail to bring. Documents that disputed the idea that Alexis purposefully disregarded ethical standards. Documents indicating she had been set up. Alexis took her seat, hands clenched tightly. She had not worn this suit in years. It seemed weird, like putting on a previous existence. Diane sat beside her, calm and precise, already sorting files. Across the room, members of the Bar Ethics Committee conversed quietly. Some appeared skeptical, others are uncomfortable. A few people avoided Alexis's eyes completely. The judge appeared and the room settled. Ms. Miller. The court said, you may proceed. Diane stood calmly. Thank you, Your Honor. This case is about restoring truth where assumption previously reigned. Alexis Davis did not lose her license because she violated the law. She lost it because someone else broke it around her and forced her to take the fall. A ripple sounded throughout the crowd. Diane didn't spend any time. She outlined timings, contradictions, and most crucially, motive. She presented emails that had been conveniently excluded from the first hearing. Phone records indicate that Alexis was away during important decisions. And then comes the pivot. The committee was told Miss Davis altered documents, Diane stated calmly. But what was never investigated is who benefited from that change. She pressed a remote button and a name flashed on the screen. A former associate, someone Alexis had previously trusted implicitly. Alexis' breath caught. Diane continued, this individual received a promotion, a collaboration, access. When the truth threatened to come out, Alexis Davis was the ideal scapegoat, already fragile and under scrutiny. The judge leaned closer. Diane finished quietly but strongly. My client's license was not revoked because she was unethical. She lost it because she remained loyal. Diane sat in a silent room. Following a brief recess, the ruling was issued quickly. The evidence presented today demonstrates a clear miscarriage of professional justice. According to the court, Alexis Davis's legal license has been reinstated, effective immediately. Full privileges. Alexis' vision clouded. Diane squeezed her hand only once. Outside, the rain had ceased. Alexis drew a hesitant breath. Diane smiled softly. I don't know how to thank you. Use it. That's enough. However, success in Port Charles was not isolated. Drew Kane sat in an interrogation room across town, arms folded and jaw tense. He had scarcely recovered from Willow's exposure when the next shoe dropped. The door opened and a federal agent entered, followed by a familiar local detective. Mr. Kane, the agent began, turning open a folder. We need to talk about 2 more matters. Drew did not blink. Let me guess. Things I didn't do. The agent did not smile. That's what we're here to determine. The initial charge struck with a brutal force. Obstruction. Evidence revealed that Drew may have unintentionally delayed access to financial documents during the initial probe. The second was worse. A conspiracy linked to judgments made during the period when his credentials were hacked. You're saying I'm being charged for crimes committed using my identity? Drew remarked with a smile. Yes, the agent responded. And intent will be the question. Drew leaned back slowly. He had expected revenge. He had not expected it to happen so quickly. Jason stood outside the room, listening through the glass, his face unreadable. When Drew appeared, pallid but composed, Jason fell and stepped beside him. They're not done, Drew remarked. They're digging until something sticks. Jason agreed. Then we stay ahead of them. At the Metro Court, word spread quickly. Alexis's reinstatement was hailed gently and cautiously. She was not prepared for champagne or speeches. She went straight to her old workplace, running her palm across the desk as if greeting an old friend. Sam stood in the doorway, his eyes gleaming. You're really back, Alexis grinned. I am, she said, but her phone chimed before the moment could settle. Diane's name flashed over the screen. Tell me you're sitting down, Diane urged. Alexis frowned. What now? Drew has been charged with 2 new offenses, Diane responded. They are attempting to reframe the story. Make him appear complicit rather than compromised. Alexis closed her eyes briefly. Of course they are. I may require your assistance, Diane continued. Once you're ready, Alexis straightened. Her determination hardened. I didn't get my license back to sit quietly. Later that night, Drew sat alone on his balcony, marveling at the city lights. The relief of being cleared had lasted precisely 12 hours. Uncertainty has returned, this time with greater intensity. 2 charges meant 2 battles, and this time, public opinion may not be on his side. Michael joined him and offered a drink. Drew nodded. You're not going through this alone. It seems like every time the truth is revealed, it causes new havoc. Michael looked out at the skyline. That's Port Charles. Willow was watching the news from a holding cell. Alexis's reinstatement scrolling across the screen first, followed by Drew's fresh charges. Her lips curled into something unreadable. Despite being discovered, the devastation she had caused persisted. And Diane Miller, standing at her office window with her phone to her ear, had already planned out the battles to come. Alexis has been restored. Drew is under fire. Truth is battered but still breathing. In Port Charles, justice was not a finish line. It was a battle that was never won for long. Night descended over Port Charles with deceptive stillness, giving people the impression that the worst had passed when it was actually gathering power. Alexis sat alone in her regained office, the lamp on her desk casting a comforting glow over heaps of files that seemed both familiar and strange. Her name was newly polished into the door outside, as if to erase the months she had spent wondering if she'd ever belong here again. She loosened her jacket and softly breathed. Getting everything back did not remove the damage. Rather, it reframed it. Loss, shame, and muttered judgments. But she now faced something considerably more terrible than remorse. She had clarity. Her phone vibrated. Diane, they moved quickly, Diane stated without preamble. Drew's arraignment is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Alexis closed her eyes briefly. 2 charges, obstruction and conspiracy, Diane said. They're arguing that even if he didn't commit the original crimes, he benefited from them and failed to act quickly enough once suspicions arose. That's thin, Alexis told me. And you know it. Thin but loud, Diane answered. And the court of public opinion is already chewing him up. Alexis rose up and began to pace slowly. Then we move ahead of it. We reframe the timeline. We demonstrate intent or the lack thereof. A pause. Then Diane's tone softened. You don't have to get back into this right away. Yes, I do. Alexis responded firmly. I didn't go through all that just to see someone else be buried by a lie in a better suit. Across town, Drew slept little. The city lights that had once soothed him now felt accusing. Each window a witness. By morning, he was dressed and ready before his alarm went off. His jaw clenched as he scrolled through articles on his phone. Drew Kane faces new legal problems. Following the shocking courtroom twist, questions remain. Michael arrived just as Drew put down the phone. They're already painting you as reckless, Michael added. Like you were careless on purpose. Drew laughed briefly. Careless is easier to believe than betrayed. At the courthouse, cameras were already set up. Drew didn't slow down as he walked by them, but the questioning continued, sharp and unrelenting. Diane greeted him inside. Her demeanor all business. Say nothing, she muttered. Alexis came shortly later and said, let me do the talking. Drew's attitude changed when he saw her. Astonishment, relief, and a glimmer of hope that he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. You're really back, he remarked gently. She nodded. And apparently, I don't do quiet returns. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was very different from Drew's previous vindication. It wasn't about shock anymore. This was about scrutiny. The prosecution carefully presented its case, portraying Drew as a man who may not have ignited the fire, but stood close enough to feel its warmth without moving away. Alexis listened closely, already identifying flaws. When it was Diane's turn, she rose confidently. What the prosecution calls obstruction, Diane explained, was actually misunderstanding purposefully fostered by another party. My customer did not delay the records. He was shut out of systems. He had no idea had been altered. She made a subtle move toward Alexis, and we will demonstrate exactly how that alteration occurred. The judge leaned forward. His interest peaked outside the courtroom. Tension radiated through the families involved in the case. Sam and Dante stood near the vending machines, arms tightly crossed. This feels familiar, Sam explained. Every time we think we're done, something else explodes. Dante gave a grimace. At least this time, Alexis is standing on solid ground, Sam said, looking toward the courtroom doors. So is Drew, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. Back inside, the judge set bail, but stated that the case will go fast. Too fast for comfort. Drew was released, but the weight followed him. Later that afternoon, Alexis and Diane sat down in Diane's office. Documents sprawled across the table like a chessboard. "They're underestimating how much damage identity compromise can do," Alexis told me. "Which tells me they don't fully understand who orchestrated this." Diane's eyes sharpened. "You think there's more?" "I think Willow was a piece, not the architect," Alexis told me. "And someone is panicking now that the spotlight has moved." As if beckoned by the notion, Alexis' phone buzzed with a blocked number. She responded cautiously. "You should have stayed down," a voice murmured softly before disconnecting. Alexis glanced at the screen, her pulse calm yet aware. "Well," she told Diane, "that answers that." Drew arrived home that night to find Jason waiting. "No greetings. There is no preamble. Someone broke into your office," Jason explained. "I did not take anything." "Just look," Drew said, running his hand through his hair. "They're double-checking what I know." Jason nodded. "Or what you're about to learn." Across town, Sonny watched the city from his balcony, phone held to his ear. "Make sure they don't touch Alexis," he told them. "This isn't just legal anymore." Meanwhile, Willow sat alone, the walls closing in as the news of Drew's accusations played on indefinitely. Her expression was unreadable. Regret flared and hardened into something colder. She had set events in motion that she could no longer control, and now others are leading them down a dangerous path. Back at her office, Alexis worked late, surrounded by files she had vowed never to open again. However, this time she was not defensive. She was prepared. Diane paused at the doorway, eyeing her for a time. "Are you okay?" Alexis smiled slightly. "I've lost everything once. It turns out that makes you fearless." Diane smiled back. "Good, because whoever is doing this has just made their second error." "And the first?" Alexis inquired. "They underestimated women who have already survived the fall," Diane told me. As the lights darkened across Port Charles, alliances silently shifted. Truth pushed closer to the surface, frail yet persistent. Alexis got her life back. Drew was facing his own fight. Diane Miller stood between them and a system that disliked being proved incorrect. In Port Charles, redemption was never without opposition.